Let's continue by looking at some additional laws that protect against electronic crimes. Copyright laws have been with us since the inception of the country. Provides a property right to the original creators of content of books, newspapers, music, movies, artwork, sculpture, and the material we see in written form or in physical form is protected by those copyright laws. However, as things have moved online, the copyright laws have not kept up with the types of protection needed. The DMCA restricts the ability of individuals to circumvent access controls that protect copyrighted material. I highlighted the text there, circumvent access controls, because this is a subtle point. The copyright laws protect the content. The DMCA prohibits circumventing access controls that are instituted to protect the content. Historically, we can look back to 1996 and the World Intellectual Property Organization, or WIPO, treaty set the rules for copyright protection, and it required signatory countries to provide legal protection and remedies against those who try to circumvent the protections placed on content. In 1998, the United States enacted the DMCA. Section 1201 punishes circumvention if the purpose of the circumvention is to break the control. So there's three key provisions. Section A1 prohibits the act of circumventing technology that controls access to copyrighted material. Section A2 prohibits trafficking in the technology that facilitates circumvention of access control measures. And Section B1 prohibits trafficking in technology that facilitates circumvention of measures that protect against copyright infringement. So looking at Section A1, prohibiting the act of circumventing technology that controls access to copyrighted material. This relies solely on whether the individual circumvented technology that was meant to protect copyrighted material. Section does not prohibit subsequent use of the material, just the circumvention of the access control. The subsequent use is governed under the copyright laws, as would any other copyrighted content. So this section is really, like I said, focused only on circumventing access controls. The courts have accepted many types of controls. In fact, even just the use of a simple password is sufficient to show that an access control exists. So they don't set the bar for what the sophistication is of the control. It's simply something that is protecting access. But we could look at some of the technologies that have been used over the years. Passwords, of course, but content scrambling system, CSS, was one of the early ways, 1996 as a matter of fact, one of the early ways of protecting content, say even video content on CDs and DVDs. It's relatively weak. It's a proprietary 40-bit stream cipher algorithm, and it's very easily compromised today. Content protection for recordable media and pre-recorded media, CPRM or CPPM, is again an encryption process. It's a 64-bit block cipher with a 56-bit key, and again fairly easily compromised today. The Advanced Access Control System, AACS, with Advanced Encryption Standard, AES, is again uses an encryption pattern, AES, to protect the content. And this is certainly a lot stronger than either CSS or CPPM. There's also what's called regional coding, RC, and regional coding enhancement, RCE. And it's applying specific regional codes and blocks access to the disk outside of your region, sort of. When I lived in Europe, I would buy a DVD in Europe, and you put it into your DVD player that says this is outside your region. Would you like to set your player to that region? And you have, I guess, a certain number of times you can make that switch, and it's a relatively low number. I think it was 5 or 6 that you could actually change your DVD player to actually show that that region. Now, this was on my computer, not on a commercial DVD player that would play on the TV. The user operation prohibition, UOP, prohibits the user from skipping certain parts of a disk, and that's usually where you would put the protection. Things like copyright notice and the FBI notice. If you noticed, if you've ever started up the DVD and watched a movie, you can't skip over those sections because it's disabled. Sony Advanced Regional Copy Control Operating Solution, or ARCOS, was Sony's version of regional coding layered on top of CSS. I've put on the slide here the features of a couple of software packages that are marketed today to to break the access control of DVDs and even Blu-rays. And as you can see in both cases, they do talk about having that capability to break those controls. By the way, don't do this. It's, as you can gather from the lecture, pretty risky, and I'd say certainly not necessarily legal. One of the advertising aspects of some of this software is they try to claim that you can make a copy as a backup to your DVD should you lose your DVD. Section A1 violations do not occur merely because a user violates a user agreement. So if a user agreement prohibits certain activities, that's not really covered under Section A1. An example of this is auto inspection services versus Flint Auto Auctions. So Flint Auto Auctions was a former customer of AIS, and they developed competing software. A developer for the Flint Auto Auctions told the court that FAA, the Flint Auto Auctions, provided him printouts of the AIS software interface. And AIS sued for violation under Section 1201A1 and sought an injunction. The court denied the request, concluding that AIS failed to show that FAA had circumvented any technological features. Using the printout is not the same thing as accessing source code, modifying source code, or creating a derivative software program. So they simply made screen printouts and were able to produce the software from there. So again, it may have been a violation under copyright, but not under Section A1. Section A1 plaintiffs must allege in their complaints that a specific technology was circumvented and how that circumvention occurred. In the case of Live Person Inc., LP, and 24/7 Customer Inc., LP alleged that 24/7 had a joint agreement with LP to support some customers. LP sued 24/7, claiming that 24/7 had used its access to the software and back end to create competing software through reverse engineering, which to reverse engineer you would have to have, you'd have to break the access control. You'd have to look at either some kind of source code, or you'd have to look at disassembled assembly language code or something to be able to reverse engineer it. The court rejected their argument, stating that just because 24/7 may have mimicked Live Person to gain access to the software components, it didn't break an access control. LP was not specific as to what access controls were circumvented or how.